Welcome into the Level Flight podcast. That's terrible energy. I gotta bring up the energy. It's late night, so I gotta bring it up.
Gotta go.
Oh boy, not a good start. I sounded so like level there, and I mean,
Yeah, level. There you go. Yeah, works.
all right, gotta bring it up here.
Yeah.
Welcome into episode 62 of the Level Flight podcast. Just the two of us today. I'm Brian, joined by Connor. Ellie can't join us today. As you can probably tell if you're watching on YouTube, we are recording this at night. Obviously, you can tell on Connor's screen because he's standing on the corner, of Portage right there beside the arena. So it's dark, but a little bit lighter than it looks like outside my window. Also, don't flame me for having my Christmas tree still up. I have not had time to take it down. So I'm getting ahead of everything early. We've got
maybe
yeah.
maybe that should be the thing we lead off with. When is it acceptable to take down your Christmas tree, or when is it too late to take down a Christmas tree?
Yeah.
Or light.
I mean, like, I feel like there's a point where there's that sweet spot where if you're one of those people who takes it down like literally New Year's Day, I'm not a huge fan. It's still the holidays at that point, especially for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But like I honestly think, and I'll be the first to admit, it's up longer than I'd like it to be. But I also haven't had the time to dedicate the afternoon to taking it down on a weekend or something. So it remains, and it's a nice little light to have in the background. So, keep it festive as long as possible. But I'm assuming in the next couple weeks it'll be down. But we have to get one of those Christmas tree bags.
Right. Yes.
So we have to order that on Amazon. But the box because we brought it over from my parents' place. The box that it came in was being held together by like 38 pieces of Gorilla Tape. So I think it's time to figure out a new vessel. When did your tree come down?
January 1st. So this is my take. Again, first of all, it's not my decision at this point because unlike you, I'm not living on my own yet.
That's a good point.
So this is my mom and dad's decision. But my mom took hers down January 1st. And I'm kind of with that. Like if the decision were up to me, I think that would be the case. The only exception I'll make for this year is it wasn't cold outside until like, I don't know, what, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So if you felt like you kind of missed out on the whole festive spirit thing because it was still like +3 on Christmas Day, or whatever it was like -1 on Christmas Day, that is a completely valid point. Leave the tree up as much as possible. Now it's finally cold. You can be in kind of the winter spirit, because I definitely felt like I missed out on a bit of that when it was -1 on Christmas Day and I could go out without a toque on. Like, what a joke. I feel like I got robbed.
Now the air hurts my face.
Yeah, and like, good. It should hurt my face. It should have been like that on Christmas Day. Anyways, this is what happens when we record at night instead of in the morning. We get 5 minutes of Christmas tree
boosting
content.
The engagement. Drop it in the comments.
Yes.
When do you take down your Christmas tree? Send us a tweet. Ask us why we're talking about this because we don't even know.
We don't.
But no, we do actually have hockey to talk about today.
Mm-hmm.
A few games. Some of them we're just kind of fly through because it's a bit more spaced out than it has been over the last while. It's less condensed, and after this, so this will come out on the Thursday morning. The Jets aren't playing again until Saturday, which is an afternoon affair with the Ottawa Senators. Is that Hockey Day in Canada?
Should be. It's a Saturday. 2 Canadian teams. If it's not, that's kind of
I think because I think it's the afternoon thing where I think they stagger the Canadian teams throughout the day. I think for that, but yeah, that's the next game after this. So it's kind of a bit of a break here, which is they haven't had in a very long while. But let's jump back to last week, last Thursday, I believe, where the Jets came away with a victory against the Chicago Blackhawks. The most important thing about this is this set the franchise record for win streak. So that was the 8th win in a row. But the thing that was about that one, the Jets were trailing for most of this game. And it was one of those ones where the deeper it got, I got terrified because it's like you can't lose this to the Hawks without Bedard.
Yeah.
But 3 minutes or so left. Velarde ties it up, and then Nikolaj
Mhm.
Ehlers with 1:05 left in the third, wires one past Peter Mrazek, gets the win, hypes up the crowd. It's the loudest I've heard the crowd in a while.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that was really the height of that game was the last like 4 minutes. Any
Yeah.
other thoughts on it, Connor?
Well, honestly, you look at the last game they played against the Hawks where Bedard scored the 2 goals and the Hawks won. You think of Peter Mrazek, like, here we go again. He's going to shut out the Jets because of course he is. Because here's a random goalie that has the Jets number. And I know he hasn't been too bad this year actually, but again, it's the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Jets at the time were like the top team in the NHL. Right now, they're the top team in the NHL by percentage points. So again, you should beat the Chicago Blackhawks without their number one draft pick. And they ended up doing that. But like you said, yeah, with 5 minutes left, I was definitely panicking. But Nikolaj Ehlers, Gabe Velarde's goal, I asked Rick Bowness about it because Scheifele goes down in this game as well. That's another thing to note. He's still out day to day with a lower body. But Adam Lowry feeds Gabriel Velarde. I asked Rick Bowness about it because Velarde seems like he's always open in front of the net. I made the comparison, I think, on Winnipeg Sports Talk that he's like an NFL wide receiver in one-on-one that you just throw the ball to all the time because you just know he's
It's like
open. And
D-Hop.
like yeah, when it's like Justin Jefferson in one-on-one on the outside. It's like when Velarde is tied up in front of the net, you can just throw the puck there because you know he's going to pop away at the perfect time and be wide open for a backdoor tap. And it's in his DNA. The timing is there. And that goal is perfect. But yeah, franchise record winning streak. And then it didn't get extended into Saturday. But those last 2 goals, like you said, the loudest I've heard the building this year. I think sold out crowd. A lot of people were expecting Bedard, didn't get it, but the crowd still made themselves heard. It was a great game, great last 5 minutes. I'm not going to say a great game because the first 55 were pretty bleak, but the last 5 minutes electric. And the Jets, yeah, franchise record winning streak. There was a lot of work packed into those last 5 minutes because you thought the Jets would lose, and then bang bang, they went bang bang, as Dennis Back would say.
Oh, which I don't think we said it. Happy retirement, Dennis.
Yes,
Uh,
we didn't say it,
well,
so good call.
yeah, he retired over the Christmas break after he finished up on his Group B assignment for TSN at the World Juniors. So, yeah, he called a lot of incredible moments over the years that he was
Yeah,
with the Jets. So, happy
absolute
retirement.
legend.
I'm sure we'll see him someplace at some point.
Absolute legend. You will have heard his voice at the start of this episode because our intro has a gold call from him. And yeah, I personally don't want to go too far down this, but I personally associate a lot of the Jets' memories, their first couple years, to Dennis Bayak and what that atmosphere in the arena was like. So happy retirement to an absolute legend. And from what I've heard, I've never met him, but from what I've heard, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So happy
Yeah,
retirement
that's what
to
I've heard too. So,
Mr. Bayak. Yeah.
absolutely. Moving on here, as we said, less of an exciting game on all fronts. So the Saturday night against the Flyers. Come into this one, no Mark Scheifele. He's out for. I mean, we still don't know exactly how long he's out for. He's eligible to return Saturday against the Senators because they placed him on IR retroactive to this game. So he's eligible to return at any point now, but we'll see. But start the game with Adam Lowry as the top line center.
Yep.
Stayed that way for the game against the Islanders. It was one of those games where kind of a nothing game. Like it was unfortunate. The Jets ended up losing 2-0. They got shut out by Samuel Ersson. They threw 35 shots at him, so it wasn't as if they were just kind of being run over, but it
Yeah.
was one of those games that, yeah, they gave up the 2 goals, didn't end up scoring, but, they put the shots at the net, but there wasn't a whole lot of other stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I think Gabriel Velarde, bringing him up again, but he had, I think, 4 or 5 grade A chances in this game, didn't score. Urson was incredible for Philly. Second out of a back-to-back for Philly, and they were fighting. I mean, John Tortorella has his teams playing hard all the time. We know that, but it was a great game inside. Like 2-0 doesn't really do it justice. It was a great game, and what impressed me the most was the third period push. I thought the Jets were admittedly bad in that second period. Rick Bowness would admit so, He even said so in the post game. And then that third period, they were all over Philly in their zone, putting shots to the net, great chances denied, would block a shot there, hit a post there. And again, it just kind of didn't bounce their way. Gabriel Velarde said they could have done more, like getting in the goalie's eyes, things of that nature. But I think this was a fine performance. And I said a few days ago, like, I've never seen Jets Twitter so content with a loss. And it's like, yeah, they obviously, because they're coming off of a franchise record setting winning streak. So if you lose, it's like, whatever. But they looked clearly gassed as a team in that second period. No Mark Scheifele, no Kyle Connor. And they still found a way to like have a great third period push and arguably outplayed the Flyers through the entirety of the game. If you look at the metrics, that would be the story. And Jets Twitter was fine. They're like, time to start a new streak. And it's like, that's the mentality fans should have, because if we started overreacting to losses, it would have been a little bit concerning coming off a franchise record winning streak. But I like the push in the third. A lot of people did. Rick Bowness didn't like the second period. A lot of people didn't. And they lost a game. So be it. It was bound to happen.
Yeah, and it was the first game since 2016 where the Jets were missing Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
So
that's crazy.
There's been points where they've been without for a little, but that was the first time where both of them were out since 2016.
Wow.
But as you said, like, it was one of those things where what really mattered was not this one, but the next game, to see how they responded to their first loss in 8. And they came out with a win. And more importantly, Kyle Connor returned a full week ahead of the lower end of his schedule for his knee injury, and helped the Jets to a 4-2 win over the New York Islanders.
Yeah, and that was the story of the game. I mean, Kyle Connor's coming back early. They say 6 to 8 weeks. Who knows if that's really what, like, maybe it was really 4 to 6, and they were just being extra cautious with the timeline so that they didn't have the pressure of, like with Gabe Velarde, it was a thing. It was 4 to 6 weeks, and then they hit the 6-week mark, and he still wasn't back. And people were like, "Oh boy, did he have a setback? Like, what's going on here?" So maybe with Kyle Connor, they're just like, say 2 weeks later, and it'll just ease the pressure. But I find it hilarious. This has nothing to do with the game, but one bone I want to pick with just fans and this one statement. I hope they're not rushing Kyle Connor back too soon and he gets hurt. I have a major bone to pick with that. Like, you are not on the medical staff. You do not know what his injury really was. What if it was really a 4-week injury? And they said 6 to 8 just to be extremely cautious, because guess what? He's their leading goal scorer, and he still was when he came back into the lineup. What, like, I just don't get. Also, I don't get that sentiment.
Contextually, that does not make sense. The Jets are the top of the league and essentially would have to go on like a 10-game losing streak to even bring them closer down to the playoff line. They're not even at the All-Star break yet. Like, I could see maybe Galaxy branding it a little bit. You're like, maybe they're falling back late in the season, and they need a push. You could maybe even make the argument of maybe he came back a little bit earlier than expected then. This is just him just recovering in the time frame that they probably saw for him, and they were just being cautious.
Yeah.
So,
and it's like,
it's not a conspiracy, folks.
Yeah. He has to be medically cleared by a doctor. He has to be medically cleared. Like, you think they just run him out there if he's not okay? Like, that's just mind-boggling to me. It's just mind-boggling. It's like,
listen,
Gabriel
we're not having we're not having any sort of conspiracy theories about the medical staff on the Jets now. No. We're not ESPN.
No, we're not. Yeah. Just it's just that was one thing that kind of pissed me off about this game, is people saying that coming in. I hope he's not rushing back. It's like, they're first in the league. They have a huge cushion. They have like the highest odds of any team in the NHL to make the playoffs. If you think the Jets are rushing him back, I don't know what to tell you, because it would make zero sense contextually, like you said. As for the actual game, Connor Hellebuyck was great, I thought, throughout. I thought the Jets definitely could have lost this game if he didn't make a few big saves, especially in the third period where New York made a push. But again, they bounced back. They battled. I tweeted out at the end of the second that the Jets had 3 of the weirdest goals I've ever seen in a row. First goal goes off of Gabriel Velarde's knee and into the net. Second goal is Neil Pionk after Ilya Sorokin's skate blade pops off and he can't move. He's literally swimming in the crease trying to move over. And then the third goal, Mason Appleton snaps a 25-game goal drought by poke checking the puck off of a defenseman's stick and into the net. He said after the game, he wasn't even trying to shoot. He just was poke checking and the puck ended up in the net. So 3 really weird goals. The fourth goal, Kyle Connor, an empty netter. Who else to score the empty netter? But the guy in his first game back, who the king of empty netters, either him or Scheifele. But yeah, I thought it was a great performance throughout. And New York was a desperate team, but they kind of shut them down late in the third there, and Hellebuyck made some big saves.
Yeah, the Islanders had lost the night before against the Wild 5-0. Sorokin got pulled.
Yeah.
So you're coming off this game where you get absolutely blasted by a bad team. And you could tell, especially like, I would say the second period, especially, you had a very different Isles team. And then rolling into the third, the momentum swung, and it was all Islanders there for a bit. But it was one of those games where it just felt like everything was making it to the net. Both teams had 30 plus shots. It felt like both goalies were kind of just all over the place. But no, like, and I will say this, and I have been vocally, opposed to a lot of the decisions defensively that Kyle Connor makes. And I wasn't going to be talking about any of his defense or his effort or anything, playing his first game in 5 weeks. But I will say this. I actually thought on the defensive side of the game, Kyle Connor looked good in his first game back. I mean, like his play at the blue line there to jar the puck loose and get the empty netter there was a really good way to cap off the night. But I actually thought that positionally in some of his gaps, I really actually thought that Kyle Connor had a decent defensive effort, which is something I haven't said a lot in the past. But who knows? Maybe this is some sort of turning point for him. I don't know, but like I'll take what I can get, and I'm sure at some point or another I'll be looking at him under a microscope again.
Yeah, I mean he's
giving him some leeway.
Yes, his first game back in 5 weeks, but to your point, he spent 5 weeks watching the best defensive team in the NHL from a bird's eye view, right? So when he was out, did the Jets give up more than 3 goals once? No. Have they given up more than 2 goals in how many games? Like 12, 13 games now? We'll get into the streaks at the end. I've got them in a separate document, just not on my laptop right now. But he's watching these guys buy in, and he's probably thinking to himself, okay, when I come back, I've got to be more responsible defensively, or I've got to be stronger along the wall, or whatever the case may be. And yeah, I agree with you. For his first game back in 5 weeks, he looked incredible. He skated. What game was that? The Flyers game, the morning skate. He skated that morning, and I thought he looked like his regular self. Like he was flying out there at morning skate. Obviously, he knew he wasn't playing, so he had nothing to conserve his energy for. But he looked great. And then the game tonight, he didn't look rusty at all, which was really impressive. And he had some nice plays to Gabriel Velarde, who, once again, every game we've covered here, he had a ton of chances that didn't go in, but at least in this one, he got rewarded as the puck hit his knee and went in. Probably his worst chance of the 3 games, but that one ends up in the net. That's just like hockey for you. But yeah, those 3 games, 3 kind of low scoring games. The Jets don't give up goals. They didn't in these 3 games, and I liked their effort in all 3.
Yeah, and as you said, like they extended their defensive streaks, and we're going to get into that more. But we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to hear from our sponsor, DraftKings, and when we come back, we're going to talk about those streaks. We're going to talk about the guy in the crease who's helping keep those alive some nights, and then we'll circle back on the whole Kyle Connor thing because his return did shuffle some lines, which has raised some eyebrows, I know, among us. But we'll be right back. Oh, yeah. We'll be right back after we hear from our sponsor, DraftKings. We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved. Welcome back into episode 62. And we didn't say this at the beginning, and I've been thinking about this for weeks. Episode 62 of the Level Flight podcast was something that came up at the when we weren't recording an episode.
Right.
And a really, really weird fact that I discovered. The number 62 for the Winnipeg Jets has only been worn twice. But the weird thing is, both players who have worn that number have the initials NN. Obviously, Nino Niederreiter wearing it right now, but former defenseman for the Jets, Nelson Nogier.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
there's a little trivia. If you hear that question at a local sports bar, now you got it. You're good to go.
That's just, I just found it so strange. Like, it's such a weird, like, having the double N as the initials for the only two players who ever worn the number for the Jets.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you look at and you just kind of, you don't necessarily pay attention to it at first, but every episode we kind of try and associate it to someone. And last week was the first episode that didn't have a single player who's ever played for Thrashers Jets with 61. So, I mean, 63, we've got options. It's the Ben Sherrod episode before he changed his number.
Right. It starts to get dicey now. You get into the 60s, you get into the 70s. It's definitely a little dicey. I mean, the 90s it picks back up. You got some guys in the 90s for sure, but
all I know is that we're going to make Elliot host episode 64.
Yes. Yes, great call. I wonder why. I wonder who wears 64. Anyways,
I wonder.
Let's and make him host 67 for that matter.
There we go. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, back on topic here. We ended off the first half of this episode before we heard from DraftKings, which thanks again to DraftKings for sponsoring this episode. We ended off with chatting about the fact that the Jets maintained their defensive streaks. Connor, I know you have a document open with all of the amazing facts about this. I'll let you take this.
Yeah, I tweeted out a few things earlier today. And there's the 33 straight games now, I believe, that they have allowed 3 goals or less. And as we know, the modern day record is 2014-15 set by the Minnesota Wild, and that was 35. So the Jets, they play Ottawa, they play Boston, and then they play the Leafs twice. They can set that record if they keep it going through this road trip. And I guess they don't even need the home game against the Leafs, just this upcoming road trip. So we'll see. But they're setting another streak now. And for those on YouTube, I'm going to try and share my screen here while I explain it. But now it's 2 goals or less. They're setting their own streak. And it is 13 straight games allowing 2 goals or fewer. There's only a handful of teams in front of them that have done this all time. And I do know out of the teams on this list, 4 of them went on to win the Stanley Cup. So the number 1 team on the list, Los Angeles Kings, 2013-14, they went, 18 straight games allowing 2 goals or fewer. They won the Stanley Cup. Canadians back in 1959, they went on to win Stanley Cup. And the Bruins in the 30s, the late 30s, and then the Rangers in the late 30s, early 40s. Those 2 teams also won the Stanley Cup. But again, that's like the Canadians, Rangers, and Bruins are in like the black and white. Like they're playing. You can see the color of their jerseys back then. So I don't really count that.
Flames team there too went to the Cup final and lost to Tampa.
Right.
But they didn't really. That was a goal, for the record. Any Flames fans listening to this, that was a goal, and I stand by that.
There you go.
But no, there's a clear correlation though with long-term success for teams that do this.
Yeah, and there's the old adage, defense wins championships. And another thing here, hold on, I tweeted out this stat. Um, Looking at the league averages of just like scoring in general when these records kind of took place. First one was this year, the Winnipeg Jets. The average goals against average for goaltenders this year is 2.93, and the average save percentage is 904. Back in 2013-14, when the Kings went 18 straight games, the average goals against average was 2.56, and the save percentage was 914. So scoring is up, goaltenders are worse, and the Jets are still on this list. And just for reference, Hellebuyck's numbers this year: 2.19 goals against average, 925 save percentage. We'll get into him and his, Hart Trophy, Vezina Trophy legitimacy in a second. But I found that super interesting that the Jets are still on that list. They're still setting all these records. And even a decade ago, like literally a decade ago to the season, scoring was down and like save percentages and goals against averages were up. That's when the Kings did this. Now in the McDavid era, in the Bedard era, whatever you want to call it, when scoring is up league wide, power plays are up league wide. The Jets are still doing it. They're close to setting the 3 goals or fewer record. And like, let me get this clear before I throw it back to your thoughts. If they don't end up setting these records, it doesn't really matter. Like it's already been so impressive what they've done to this point that whether or not they end up with 36 games allowing 3 goals or fewer, or they get pumped by Ottawa on Saturday, I don't really think it matters. They've already done the good work, if you will. And getting on that list with a bunch of teams from the 60s and the LA Kings from 2013, who when scoring was down and they ended up winning the Stanley Cup, I think that's just incredibly impressive. But what are your thoughts on the incredible run of the historic run of defensive play from the Jets?
As you said, like it's one of those things that if they gave up 4 goals against Ottawa on Saturday, no one's really going to be like, "Oh man, that soils the whole thing."
Couldn't even set the record. Yeah, like what's the point? Yeah,
Because that's the thing. No one's going to care if the Jets win 6-4.
right. Yeah.
Because let's be real, you can easily put 6 past Ottawa goaltending.
Yes.
So that's what really matters here. And as you said, we've gone so far into this now where regardless of what happens or whenever this ends, because at some point or another, someone's going to put up 4 on you. Like someone's going to have
They're
an
not
off
going.
night.
They're not going the rest of the season allowing 3 or less, or 2 or
I
less
mean,
for that matter. Like,
which put me on record. Uh, I'll do anything if if they go the rest of the season and what if they go the whole season at this point, like essentially it's like at that point you're about 75-80% of the games you've allowed
yeah.
3 goals or less. I will debut a clean shaven Brian on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
don't. I mean, that's the thing. Like we still got the whole All-Star break coming up. I'm confident that it probably won't happen, but I'd be happy to shave all of this off, which I don't think I've been clean shaven in probably 3 years. Um,
Okay. Okay.
I think the last time we were still recording without video in studio because
Yeah.
think I brought it right down. I didn't clean shave it, but the closest I
Mhm.
got was when we weren't on camera. But
Right.
no, that's my promise to you, to the Level Flight listeners. I will shave my beard if the Jets go the remainder of the games without giving up any more than 3 goals.
If they go, what do they have? Like 40? No, they've passed the 40 mark. They've got like 39 games left or
Yeah,
38, something like that. So they'd have to
and you
set.
know
They
what?
have to
Connor
double all
promises
these
to actually
records.
grow a beard.
Actually, I can promise that even if I tried. So we'll we'll maybe pump the brakes on that. But yeah, I think you've got nothing to worry about. Just like the franchise record winning streak, this is bound to end at some point.
But
So
I'd be
just kind of
happy. I'd
enjoy
be
the
so
ride.
happy to shave my
Oh
beard if
yeah.
it stayed.
Oh yeah. Just kind of enjoy the ride right now because this is a historic defensive team. And it bodes well for what they're going to do in the playoffs. And And Rick Bowness is heading to the All-Star game. I guess that's one thing we forgot to mention in the game recaps. But this is why they've allowed 3 goals or fewer in 33 straight, 2 goals or fewer in 13 straight. This is the system. Like, this roster is the same except for Velarde and Iafallo. And yes, we like Velarde, Iafallo, and even Kapari to an extent, who hasn't been in the lineup much. We like their defensive game, but they are not the difference between the Jets being a 90 point or 99 point wild card team and a top of the NHL all like historic defensive team. This is not what this is. This is Rick Bowness. This is the coaching staff. This is Connor Hellebuyck playing out of his damn mind. And this team is historic defensively. So whether they set the record or not, my point is I think the damage has already been done, and they've already proven to the hockey world how dominant they are in their own zone. I don't know if you agree with that.
Oh no, I definitely agree, and I think the thing is too is we're also seeing the benefits of giving Connor Hellebuyck these nights where he's not as insanely active, because I feel like
Agreed.
the last few years, he's the reason that we're giving up fewer goals. This year, it feels like, for the most part, we're not giving up as many goals is because we're not making him have to stand on his head every night. That being said, there are some nights, like I'll be honest, like the Islanders game felt like the first game in a while where it felt like they got a little bit out of their system. But there was Connor Hellebuyck.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it feels like if they do ever get out of that, which they will occasionally, Hellebuck's there to bail them out. And honestly, to an extent, so is Laurent Brossoit. Brossoit has
Yeah.
really pulled it together after a very rough start, which is the same case for Hellebuyck, which obviously one is playing significantly more games and has played out of his mind now for like 2 full months.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's one of those things where I don't think people realize how different this team is from last year, because there's still people talking about the whole, well, they collapsed in January. We saw a team that was riding goaltending and unsustainable scoring last year. They got cold, and you can't put it all on Connor Hellebuyck because if he has to make 30, 35 saves every night, you're going to let some of those in. This team is doing it so much more sustainably. They're keeping Connor Hellebuyck less busy. They're scoring by committee. Like you look at like the Vancouver Canucks, for example, which they're doing incredible things out on the West Coast. But they have like 5 guys in the top 20 in NHL scoring. I don't think the Jets have one.
Yeah, Kyle Connor was up there, but obviously he's hurt now, and they went on this long run without him. But yeah, I
Like they're scoring by committee. Like the highest scorer on the team is 41 points. That's Mark Scheifele. If you're talking active players, it's a tie between Josh Morrissey and Nikolaj Ehlers with 33 points. They're not having issues scoring though. That's the thing. Like they're still putting up goals. Everyone's doing it. Cole Perfetti is the 4th highest scorer on the team, and that's been a welcome addition. You got Kyle Connor, who missed all this time, and he's still the 5th highest scorer. You got Nino putting up, 20, 30 points. Like it's one of those things where they're doing it such a different way this year that you're also seeing too. They banked so much like of a point total in the last month that, as I said, it would take something monumental to do something to this team that would drop them out of a playoff race. Even if that's the thing, like obviously there's a certain level of attention and notoriety you get if you finish at the top of the league. And there's something cool about that. And like having that President's Choice trophy, I don't think the curse exists. A lot of people do. But I think what you'd look at though is the fact that they don't have to finish top of the league to still finish top in the Central. And like the West is kind of all over the place. The East is even worse for being kind of chaotic. It feels like there's teams in the West that are sitting like 20th in the league standings, but are like 1 point back of a wild card spot.
Yeah.
So you have such an incredible opportunity here to just keep playing your game and not get discouraged, because the rest of the West is kind of all over the place. And you were so, solidified in your spot right now that I wouldn't worry.
Yeah, I agree. And a few things. First off, I believe, if my ears did not mistake me, you called it the President's Choice Trophy, and I found that hilarious.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
I mean, let's be real.
President's
Galen
choice.
Weston probably
Yeah.
bought it. Now he's going to upcharge teams to get it. So this is
No,
an
when I heard that, I was
anti-Galen
like,
Weston podcast.
when I heard that, I was like, President's choice. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, yes. First thing, yes. Second thing, let's not kid ourselves. The Jets hit a crazy PDO slump last year. Like you see what the Canucks are doing right now with their PDO, and you might see that they're overshooting their expected goals, and their goaltending is incredible. That's what the Jets were last year, and then they hit a massive slump, and it all regressed. And we even sat here on this podcast, and all three of us took the Jets to beat Vegas in round one because we still believe that the PDO would correct itself for the playoffs, and the team was good enough. And obviously they weren't. I think they had too many injuries to overcome in that series, but we still believed because it was just a PDO slump, and it was like we saw it in the first half. Maybe Hellebuyck gets hot. Maybe the PDO kind of reverses itself, and the Jets will be just fine. Again, they could go through a nasty PDO slump this year as well, but I'm not betting on it. And neither should you. This team is legit for all the reasons Brian just mentioned. The way that they're doing it, it's sustainable, and the defensive streaks. And let's get to Connor Hellebuyck because we've brought him up a few times. And we reached out earlier today for some questions, if you will. And Neil, who runs a great podcast on the Devils under the Hockey Podcast Network. So go check that out.
Also writes for the Hockey Writers.
Yes, he does. Yes. One of our biggest supporters. He's always retweeting our stuff, liking our stuff. Big shout out to him. He asked what the legitimacy we think for Hellebuyck being a Hart candidate. And obviously we're kind of biased to this, but obviously we think he's the favorite for the Vezina. I think nationally he's the favorite for the Vezina. It's either him or Thatcher Demko. But now, whenever you're the favorite for the Vezina, people always say, well, what about the Hart? Like, what if, we could kind of creep in there? I'll get your thoughts on this first, and then I'll roll through my thoughts. But what are your thoughts on potential MVP consideration for Connor Hellebuyck?
I think with me, I would love nothing else than to have him as the MVP. But we also have to realize that in the however many years they've been awarding the Hart Trophy, there have been 7 goalies who have ever won it, and one of them did it twice. That was Dom Hasek.
Well, hasn't there only been one in the last, what would that be, 23 years too, since Hasek, and it was just Price in 15?
There was one between. There was Jose Theodore.
Right. Okay.
Won it in, I think, 02. Because I remember that from the quiz that we did.
Yes.
Which if you're on YouTube, I'll link that at the end of the video. Go watch that.
There you go.
But no, and then it was Price in 14, 15. And the thing that I want to sort of say is, like, I do legitimately think that you could make a case for Hellebuyck to be named an MVP. But I think the issue, though, is the fact that everyone agrees that this year he's having to do less work in the net.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest issue with this. In years past, if the Jets were this successful at this point, with the defensive system that you had seen from them, I would say 100% I would label him as a front runner. But everyone has been saying it. Like, this is the easiest that it has been for Hellebuyck in years. And I do think, though, like, you have to look at some of the numbers. His numbers at this point through the season, they are looking somewhat comparable to Carey Price in 2014-15. Hellebuyck already at 5v5. He has, let me open this up here, 20.1 goals saved above expected. In 2014, through the entire season at 5-on-5, Carey Price had 29.6.
Yeah,
so
like, and Price that year, I'm keep an eye out for this. I'm writing a piece right now on this very topic, on whether or not Hellebuyck should be considered for the Hart, and Price obviously is the most recent goalie to win it, so you're going to compare him to him. His stats, I believe, was a .933 save percentage and a 1.96 goals against, which is absurd. But Hellebuyck, like I said earlier in the episode, .925 save percentage, 2.19 goals against. So he's getting there. And I tweeted this out earlier today, but his numbers since the beginning of December, and if he were to stay on this pace, it would be he would exceed those numbers, because since the start of December, he's 12-1-2. He's got a 174 goals against average and a 941 save percentage, and he's allowed 2 goals or fewer in 14 of 15 starts. The one start he gave up 3 was the Montreal overtime power play winner. So the way he's played since the start of December, since he's shed kind of that slow-ish start that you talked about earlier, he's been better than Price was that year. So if he stays on this trajectory, the numbers will be similar. The Jets will be a top 3 team in the NHL at the absolute minimum if he stayed on this trajectory. And his numbers will be very comparable. The goals saved above expected, he'll pass 29 with ease. He's done that in the past. His Vezina year, I think he had over 30. So I think he's definitely a lock for the Vezina, but if this keeps up, you could get some serious traction and some serious votes for him for the Hart. While there are arguments against, I want to get your thoughts on kind of the arguments for. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you can say with absolute certainty that he is the most valuable Jet. And
yes, well,
if I would still think so, like with the
it's
scoring
him or Morrissey, in my opinion, because Morrissey, that back end without Morrissey might not look great, but then again, the goaltending might not look great without Hellebuyck. So I think it's Hellebuyck. Now that I gave it a second to think, it's definitely Hellebuyck. Yeah,
it's been that way for the last 5 years, if not longer. And I truly think that if you put it this way, if he's the most valuable player on the Jets and the Jets are the best team in the NHL, there's a legitimate argument there.
Yeah.
And I know you asked me for my arguments for, but I couldn't remember if this was the year. We have to also think about the fact that Price won it in a year where the NHL's highest scorer had 87 points.
Yeah.
So there's no clear cut like Connor McDavid scored 160 points. Give it to him, or Austin Matthews scored 70 goals. Like you're getting to a point where it's like it's easier to name a goalie the Hart winner when there's not like some dude doing otherworldly things on the offensive side of games. And just to put it into perspective, Jamie Benn had 87 points at the end of that season to win the Art Ross. Nate McKinnon has 72 points already before the All-Star break.
Oh, and that actually proves my point earlier about the 2013-14 Kings. If you want to know where scoring was at and what the Jets are doing now compared to what it was like back then. But yeah, I agree with you.
Hold on, I'm looking for the 2013-14 scoring leaders to see who led the league that year.
While you search that up, I'm going to agree with you on this, because there are players. I don't think he should be the front runner. I think he should be in the conversation. Guys ahead of him: McKinnon, McDavid, Matthews. And it's a player's award. Let's not kid ourselves. Like, there's a reason only one goalie has won it in the time that I've been alive on this earth. And it's because it's a player's award, and they just usually give it to the guy with the most points. They take home both the Art Ross and the Hart, and everyone's happy, and see you later. And Nathan McKinnon, I think this year, if the season ended today, I'd give it to McKinnon. Colorado's depth is absolutely terrible, and the fact that he's playing this well and kept them afloat and kept them second seed in the Central, top 5 in the NHL. I think McKinnon should be the absolute front runner. But the question is about consideration. Yes, the question is about consideration, and Hellebuyck definitely deserves that. And I think
I would say so.
Fringe top 5 if the season ended today.
He gets votes. 100% he gets votes.
Maybe not first place votes, but votes.
You'll see him on the list when they release the voting. Also, for the record, 2013-14, only one player crested the 87-point mark. And that was Sidney Crosby, who won the Hart that year with 104 points.
See, like, McDavid put up how many points last year? And so
it
one
was
player
close to 160, wasn't it?
It was over 150. I know that, but one player passed 87. They got over 100. Second high. Do you have like a list there? What was second highest? Because my point here is just getting better by the stat. Yeah. For 2013-14, because
Ryan Getzlaf had 87 points.
See, like,
And then Claude Giroux, who shout out Giroux, which whenever we do a trade talk thing, his
yes.
name comes up among Jets fans. I don't know if it's feasible or not, but we'll talk about that. Tyler Seguin, Corey Perry, Taylor Hall, Phil Kessel. But that's the thing. Only 7 players were at 80 points or higher.
Yeah, like there's gonna be so many players above 80 points this year. It's just
I'm
crazy.
I'm I'm
And
going into last season to see how many were above the 80 mark because it feels like there was a lot
okay,
last year.
while you do that, I'll continue to ramble. This just proves like not only does it prove what the Jets are doing defensively, but it also proves our point for Hellebuyck deserving Hart consideration. Because like we said with the Islanders game, there are games where the Jets get out of structure, they get out of system. It doesn't happen often, but it'll happen for a period. It'll happen for maybe 2 periods, and Hellebuyck will slam the door, and this streak is stayed alive. You don't get to 33 games allowing 3 or fewer without elite goaltending, without the best goalie in the world. And that's what he is. And if they break these streaks, it's a testament not only to the system, but to Hellebuyck. So all these stats that you're bringing up are not only proving the point about their defensive dominance, but especially what Hellebuyck's been able to do.
Well, it's just addressing the state of the NHL too, where you
Their
see all
scoring's
of these
up.
guys that are just insanely productive.
Yeah.
Where last season, 31 players crested the 80-point mark. 28 of those were a point per game.
Yeah.
But like you also saw 11 players 100 points or more. Let's just add to this. 5
Yeah.
were above 110 and 2 were above 120. Like it's one of those things where it's like you're not seeing those numbers very often. Like it's been years since we've seen that. Like I'm trying to remember the last time you had multiple 110 plus scores.
You'd have to go back for sure.
Did Ovi and Sid do it at one point in the 2010s?
Maybe at the peak of their powers.
Uh,
Um, yeah, but that's crazy to think about how much scoring is up and how good how
yeah.
well the Jets have played and how defensively sound they've been. Um, yeah, but I don't know. Do we have anything else on Hellebuyck? I mean,
I mean, we could
we're
talk about Hellebuck for an entire episode itself, but I feel like it's a good time to kind of move ahead here.
yeah, we definitely could get into, um, next thing you start talking about a statue, you know, I mean, hey, if this keeps up and if the Jets ever win a Stanley Cup and Connor Hellebuyck's the goalie, I think the statue is mandatory.
Yeah.
Mandatory.
Also, there's something I forgot to bring up that I feel needs to be mentioned. At all situations in 2014-15, the 5th highest goal saved above expected, Andre Pavlik.
Pavs. With that could go on for another hour. If we got into Andre Pavlik discourse, that we would
He had 18.5 goals saved above expected that year at all
wow,
situations. And then
underrated.
at 5-on-5, he had 9.1, which was 11th best in the league.
Fringe top 10. Would you look at that? That's
Higher than Henrik Lundqvist.
we are going to start a dialogue. He's higher than if Andre Pavlik played in the Rangers system. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on. We've got one final topic, and it's the Kyle Connor. He's back. And this shuffled up the lines. Nikolaj Ehlers, as he has been over the past 7-8 years, got the demotion to the second line. If you're on podcast, I'm using air quotes because the second line is really the third line. And to be honest, they're almost the fourth line, given their 5-on-5 time on ice. So what do you make of, I mean, obviously we've made our thoughts very clear with Nikolaj Ehlers on this podcast. We think he should have more playing time. He looked great in top line minutes. And they were very quick to demote him. Now, that's not to say that Connor and Velarde didn't look good together, and I think they should give that a look. And maybe now's the time to do it. I'll digress, and you go ahead. What are your thoughts on Ehlers getting demoted?
I'm gonna keep it kind of short because like I feel like the discourse has been running rampant ever since they released the morning skate lines against the Islanders. My whole thought on it is that you have a 5-week sample size of how Nikolaj Ehlers on the top line has made the top line better. Over that time, he has the most 5-on-5, or he's tied for like in the top 5 in 5-on-5 points over that time. Uh, the possession and shot numbers are unreal with that line. And typically, when someone comes back from injury, you don't put them right back on that top line. We saw it with Velarde. He started on the fourth line for a little bit in the first little bit of that game that he came back. Why is it that Kyle Connor gets to get slotted right back into where he was, and Nikolaj Ehlers, who has played the best hockey of his entire career, has to get relegated down to that second line, which I truly think that they're missing out here, because Cole Perfetti and Kyle Connor seem like a match made in heaven, with Perfetti's vision and passing and Connor's shooting ability. And then you have a guy like Nemesnikov in the middle who will pick up any slack that has been left defensively.
Yeah.
That line would be so good, and you could play them almost equally with the first line.
Yeah.
But immediately you drop Ehlers down and their ice time drops. Even with Adam Lowry centering the top line.
Dropped like a rock. It was
Yeah.
pretty quick. Yeah. You keep going. I kind of cut you off there.
It's just the thing that bothers me the most is I am a huge believer of, if you deserve the ice time and you've earned the ice time, you should be given the ice time. And Ehlers has done nothing but earn and deserve that top line slot. And he did so much for the team in that position, where that top line has been among the best in the league. His performance is the best in the league. People are taking notice. People are calling him the best forward on the Jets. And he gets demoted because a guy who's been out for 5 weeks comes back. Like, where is the reward in that? Like, we've seen it all the way through, and it's there's clearly there's some sort of pre-existing notion that Ehlers shouldn't be a top line player within the coaching staff. And all I say to that is watch how he plays. Yeah, he turns the puck over occasionally because he's the only one skilled enough to try and bring the puck across the line and do it fast. And some of the little things he does, they can be a little bit reckless, but they've led to more goals than not. And as I said, like, I've talked a lot about Connor's defensive play. He has the most goals on the Jets, yes, but he's also been on the ice for, I think, the most goals against in that top line role. It's like you're getting a better goal differential with Ehlers on that top line. And we have a sample, like a 3-game sample size with Connor and at that point it was Scheifele and Velarde, and they were great. That was awesome. I'm sure they'll be great again. That's whatever. But you had a line that was working at the time. Why disturb that? And I feel like there's a hypocrisy floating around here where there's a lot of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. People around there, but are totally fine with this.
Yeah, and the to your point, Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton have been together for how long? And I'm not saying that line has been bad, but they definitely struggled at times. And the Jets and Rick Bowness have had no issues keeping them together for the entirety of the year and playing them second line minutes. Ehlers played 14 and a half minutes against the Islanders. Since Kyle Connor got hurt, he played 16 games, had 8 goals, 9 assists, and that top line outscored their opponents 15-4 at 5-on-5. In terms of points at 5-on-5, that was Money Puck's tracking, so it's a little bit dicey in terms of, if all 3 players were on the ice when the goal was scored, etc. So like they scored 15 as a line, but Ehlers himself had 18 points at 5-on-5, which since November 30th, here's the list. Elias Pettersson, Nathan McKinnon, 19 points. Bo Horvat, Connor McDavid, Matthew Barzal, Nikita Kucherov, Nikolaj Ehlers, 18 points. Those are your top 7 scores in the NHL at 5-on-5 since November 30th. And Nikolaj Ehlers, yes, he's managing an upper body issue. Frankly, I don't care. He should not be playing 14 and a half minutes a night. It really doesn't make sense to me. Especially when Kyle Connor's making his first game back. We saw them ease in Gabriel Velarde, when he came back from his knee injury. There was no easing in for Kyle Connor. Yes, I made the point earlier, if he's healthy, he's healthy. But still maybe playing him 20 minutes a night when he'll be rusty might not be in their best interest. And yeah, I feel like the Perfetti Ehlers discourse is not going to change this year. I feel, especially on this podcast, they're going to be not playing much. Third line, even if Dominic Toninato is the center of the third line, they're going to get more minutes than Nikolaj Ehlers, which is just puzzling.
Well, the issue too is not only was Ehlers great on that first line, the second line of Ehlers, Nemestikov, Perfetti absolutely shoves. They are so good.
Yes,
Like
they have
they,
great
I
metrics.
believe they might actually be, in terms of expected goals, the Jets' best line since they were put together. But they don't get the ice time. They're not rewarded for anything. Cole Perfetti's benched with like 15 minutes left in the third, and we see him once. Like it's one of those things where I'm like, obviously the Jets are number one in the league. And I get that. I understand that. But I also don't think we're above the fact that we can not question why things are being done that might even make us better.
And as Rick Bonus would say, yeah, we're number one, but we still got things to clean up.
Like,
So
I think you clean up a lot by just balancing your ice time between that second and third line, which we could get into more. Maybe we'll talk about it more next week, especially because he scored this week. But we were talking about it at school the other day, where I think we have a conversation about Mason Appleton.
yeah,
But that might be a conversation for next week.
yeah.
But no,
And
I don't know about you, but I think that's about all the, you know, reasonable thoughts I can get out of my brain at this point without starting to just get unreasonably angry.
I agree. I do want to bring up one point that Murata Tesh made on Wednesday's show of Winnipeg Sports Talk, and that's throughout this season, when there's a TV timeout and an offensive zone faceoff. So prime spot to get your best offensive players out there, TV timeout, everyone's rested, clean slate. Who do the Jets put out there? It's Mark Scheifele and Adam Lowry, and it's their lines, right? So Mark Scheifele will be alongside Connor and Velarde or whoever is on the top line, and they'll be the line that goes out there in a high leverage spot. I'd like to see Perfetti and Ehlers get a few more high leverage offensive zone starts. Not sure who tweeted out the offensive zone starts last game, but that through 40 minutes, Ehlers, Nemestikov, Perfetti hadn't started a single shift in the offensive zone. And the Jets
Which is where
had
they
like a
should
fair amount
be.
of, which is yes, that is exactly where they
Which
should be.
I don't know. Maybe this conversation changes if the Jets go out and they, acquire a legitimate second line center, because
Yeah.
at that point too, you're sinking the cost into that line, and so you're obviously going to play them more.
Mhm.
Because I don't think this is a Paul Maurice situation where you acquire Kevin Hayes and then play him on the third, fourth line.
No,
But
no.
at this point in time, they need to be playing more. And I understand there's the whole old argument of face-offs, because Nemestikov's not good in the draw, and I'll admit that he
Yep.
does. He's sitting somewhere between 30 and 40%, which is not
Not good.
ideal.
No.
And I have a feeling that probably plays a role in why they don't start in the offensive zone. But what you also have to realize is that guys like Ehlers and Perfetti, they might not be the biggest guys. They get in there.
Yeah.
Perfetti goes into board battles. Like he does not seem to care that he has had shoulder issues, back issues. He sends himself in there and tries to get the puck. I think people don't see that because he's small, but
Yeah.
it's true. And same with Ehlers, just sends himself in there sometimes. And
Yeah.
Nemesnikov, as we know, he's just one of those guys who just works really hard. So even if they lose the faceoff, there's a chance they still come out with that puck. But I do legitimately think that we have a different conversation if they acquire someone else to play second line center. And I do think legitimately that is the one spot, if I had to choose, would
Yeah.
be the one thing I would improve upon. So I don't know.
It's 2017-18 all over again. It's just
Yeah.
this team is a wagon and you know it. And there's just you gotta get that 2C. Gotta get that 2C. Vlad Nemeskov is the new Brian Little. It's
Yeah,
just
there you go.
getting replaced at 2C year after year. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and maybe it changes. Maybe there's a game coming up where they're down a goal in the third, and they get a lot of shifts, and they're out there a ton. But the face-off thing is hilarious to me because the Jets are the number one team in the NHL, and they suck at face-offs. It's like maybe there's maybe that doesn't matter as much as
It
we
doesn't
might.
matter what happens when the puck hits the ice. It matters what happens after.
Yeah, like defensive structure. We've talked about that. We've talked
Or
about how
checking.
great Hellebuyck has been. Forechecking. There's a lot. There's a lot more that goes into that. And I think unless you have any more thoughts, I think that's gonna wrap up the bigger topics. Yeah. There is one thing I want to plug that we have coming up, and I'm super excited for because we said we would do this months ago. And we found a time. We're gonna do it. Friday, we're going to have Scott Wheeler of The Athletic back on the program, and he is going to give us a rundown on the Jets of the World Juniors. Obviously, Rutger McGroarty came away with the gold. Elias Salomonson came away with the silver. Fabian Wagner was also in that game. All three Jets prospects were in the gold medal game, so that's an interesting note. There's also a lot of young players, either with the Moose, like Nikita Chibrikov, friend of the pod, Danny Zhilkin, or
Brad Lambert.
Brad Lambert, or a Cole Perfetti with the big club that we want to get Scott's opinion on. And who better? He's the prospect guru. He's the number one guy for NHL prospects. So we're super excited for that. You can expect that episode. I believe the Jets play Monday, so maybe we'll leave that for an off day. That might be next Tuesday. And then we'll be back with our regular recording next week to break down the 3-game road trip. And the Jets play Saturday against Ottawa, Monday against Boston, Wednesday against the Leafs. And then next Saturday, they're back home against the Leafs again, a home and home.
All they have to do is just let the Leafs get a multi-goal lead.
Yeah.
And then it's a guaranteed win.
The funny thing is, there is a good portion of Jets fans, and I don't blame them. I'm not blaming these people. That if the Jets have been so successful this year, if they lose back-to-back games, the season's a failure. If they lose the home and home both games to the Leafs, this season is an absolute failure.
It's just I think it's a combo of the quantity and the opponent. Like if it was back to back against someone random, it'd be like, oh man, that sucks. Against the Leafs,
what happened in the back to back against the Wild? How much drama came out of that? The Jets swept it, right? That was another one of their biggest rivals. The Leafs, I don't know if it's one of their biggest rivals, but things always happen.
I think this is the first year in a while that you can legitimately look at the Jets and say, yeah, they're absolutely the better team.
They should win. Yes,
they should win. So yeah, that'll be fun.
That'll be really fun, and I can't wait to come back next week. We'll be breaking down. They play Wednesday, so maybe we'll record Thursday and get our thoughts on that game, our fresh thoughts, and then preview the Saturday game and the All-Star break, which Rick Bowness and Connor Hellebuyck are heading to represent the Jets. But yeah, do you want to close this thing out, or should I?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go for it. Yeah, let's do it.
Well, don't forget to like, subscribe on our YouTube. We're slowly climbing up in the subscriber ranks, so let's keep that rolling. Views are going up. We've had a lot of views in our last few episodes, so it's nice to see that growing. As always, find us on your podcast platform of choice. If you can, give us a 5-star rating, and then just follow us on probably Twitter. That's probably where you're going to find us most. So I really just think that this next week, especially, we're looking forward to it content-wise with all the games. Chat with Scott Wheeler. It's going to be a big week for us, so we're looking forward to having you along for the ride. So for myself and from Connor, thanks for listening to episode 62. We'll be back with episode 63 next week at some point, and we'll see you then.
See ya.